Every story has a door, every city has its forgotten corners, places people pass by without a second glance, and in those corners stories hide, not the kind you read in books or watch on screens, but the kind that whisper through cracks in the wall. The kind that waits. Tonight's story is not about ghosts, not really, it's about belief, about what happens when we challenge the stories the world tries to bury, and one man, Ethan Kane, was foolish enough or brave enough to go looking. It all began with a storm, a fading neon sign, and a hotel that should have never reopened. Let me take you back to the night Ethan checked into the Argent Hotel. The arrival of Ethan Kane wasn't afraid of stories. In fact, he made a living out of unraveling them. Urban legends, local hauntings, conspiracy theories. He hunted them like prey, disassembled their illusions, and served them raw on printed pages. But the story that led him to the Argent Hotel was different. It hadn't been told in years, not publicly at least, buried under hush money, sealed files, and whispered warnings, yet something about it called to him. The cab slowed down in front of the hotel, its rusted sign flickering under the rain like a dying eye. "You sure about this?" the driver muttered. Ethan nodded, gripping his old leather bag. He stepped into the storm and watched as the cab sped away, too fast, too eager to leave. The lobby of the Argent was frozen in time, velvet chairs nobody sat on, a grand chandelier missing half its crystals, and a ticking clock that pointed to no real hour, and behind the desk an old man watched him like someone expecting a ghost. Ethan smirked. This was going to be good. The legend of room 1707, room 1707, wasn't just another hotel room. It was the heart of a mystery no one dared to speak of. 17 years ago, during a normal spring weekend, every guest staying on the 17th floor vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle, no security footage, just open doors, half-drunk wine glasses, and silence. The police investigation hit a wall, the case went cold, the floor was sealed, the hotel shut down within months. Officially, it was due to structural concerns. Unofficially, people said the hotel swallowed them whole, that something in room 1707 had called them. Now, after years of silence, the hotel had reopened. Quietly, no press, no online presence, just a faded neon sign and a new front desk clerk who didn't speak of the past. But Ethan had found the blueprints. He had the floor layouts. He had a copy of the key to 1707. And tonight, he planned to stay in the room no one ever left. The concierges warning the concierge looked like he came with the building. Skin creased like old paper, eyes cloudy but not dull. Ethan approached the counter with confidence, flashing a printed booking confirmation. "Room 1707, he said. The man froze, not in hesitation, more like recognition. "There's no floor 17, he said slowly, as if repeating a line he'd been trained to deliver. Ethan leaned in. "I'm not a tourist, and I don't scare easy. I know about the floor. I know what happened, and I know you still have the key." The old man's eyes twitched. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, as if resigning himself to something he'd always feared, he reached beneath the desk and slid forward a brass key. Old, scratched, but unmistakably numbered 1707. "You knock once," the concierge whispered, "but it listens twice." Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the lobby lights flickered, and the man was gone, not walked away, not moved, just gone. The elevator that chooses Ethan stood in front of the vintage elevator, clutching the cold brass key like it pulsed with its own heartbeat. He stepped inside, half expecting the doors to jam or the lights to cut. He pressed the button marked 17. Nothing happened. He sighed and pressed it again and again. The elevator didn't even hum. Then, without touching it, the button lit up. The elevator lurched with an old mechanical groan and began to rise, skipping the floors without a chime. 6, 9, 12, and then it stopped. The display read 17, a floor that didn't officially exist. The doors creaked open like they hadn't done so in years. What lay beyond was a hallway trapped in time, faded wallpaper, cracked sconces, a red carpet bleached into dusty brown, but all the doors were dark. Silent, neglected, except one, 1707 glowed, its brass plate shined unnaturally bright. Ethan stepped forward, his breath shallow. The air felt thicker here, like it had been holding its breath for years. And then he knocked once. The room that shouldn't be this clean, the door creaked open with the sound of strained hinges. Yet the air that spilled out was surprisingly warm, untouched by dust or time. Ethan stepped inside room 1707 and instantly knew something was wrong. Not frightening, not ghostly, but wrong. The room was spotless, too spotless. A grand, old-fashioned bed with crisp white linens. A velvet armchair facing a fireplace that hadn't seen flame in decades, but smelled faintly of smoke. A polished writing desk sat by the window, which overlooked nothing but pitch-black fog. Ethan scanned the room with a skeptic's eye. It looked like it had been cleaned that very morning, but who would clean a room on a floor that didn't exist? Then he saw it, an antique phonograph in the corner. As if sensing him, the record began to spin. A soft melody filled the room. He didn't recognize the tune, but it tugged at something deep in his chest, like a memory that had no source. He set up his camera, voice recorder, and notebook. This was going to be his best story yet. A voice that knows his name with everything set up. Ethan did what he always did to provoke activity. If anyone is here, he said aloud, show yourself. The room remained still. The melody from the phonograph played on. He grabbed his recorder and pressed play to check the audio quality. Static hissed through the small speaker for a moment. Then a voice whispered back, welcome back, Ethan. He froze, the breath caught in his throat. He hadn't said his name aloud. No one here knew his name. He replayed the recording, the same chilling whisper. Goosebumps erupted across his arms as the air in the room shifted. He could feel it, like the room had exhaled. He slowly turned toward the door, his instinct screaming to leave, but the door was gone, not closed, not locked, gone where there should have been an exit. It was now just wallpaper, perfectly seamless, as if it had always been that way. The room wasn't a room anymore. It was a trap, and it had remembered his name. Let me know when you're ready for keynote 7 and 8, and I'll continue crafting the story in this intense, immersive style. No door, no escape. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears as he backed away from the vanished door. His mind scrambled for explanations. Hallucination, hidden panel, some kind of prank. He pounded on the wall where the door had been. Nothing gave way, just wallpaper and cold silence. The room, once unnaturally pristine, began to shift in feel. The air grew heavy, as if soaked in invisible weight. The once cozy glow of the lamps now cast long, stretched shadows that slithered against the walls. He tried the window, locked. The fog outside was so dense he couldn't even see the glass. It was like staring into a blank void. He banged on it anyway. No sound, no vibration. The glass didn't respond. Then, from behind him, the phonograph stopped, and in that pause, in the absolute stillness, Ethan heard something else, breathing. Not his own, slow, calm, and close. He turned fast. No one, but deep in the mirror across the room, something moved. The mirror's warning the mirror, a grand old thing with an ornate gold frame, had seemed decorative when he first arrived. Now it was alive. Ethan stared into it, and his reflection stared back, but something was wrong. His reflection was delayed, slightly out of sync. When he tilted his head, the image followed half a second too late. He raised a hand. It hesitated before copying him. It was watching him, not mimicking him. And then another figure appeared behind his reflection, a woman. She wore a tattered white dress, her face ghost, pale, her eyes hollow like burnt-out moons. She stood silently behind Ethan's mirrored self, staring straight at him, not the reflection. Him heart-pounding, he turned around. The room behind him was empty, but in the mirror she remained, now smiling. Slowly, one skeletal hand reached forward from inside the mirror and touched the shoulder of his reflection, and in that chilling moment the mirror rippled, then grabbed him. Trapped between worlds, it didn't feel like falling. It felt like unraveling. When the mirror pulled Ethan through, he expected a crash, a wall, a floor, something. But instead there was nothing, no up or down, no color, no noise, just a thick, infinite black, like he'd stepped into a paused dream. And he wasn't alone. Around him floated dozens, no, hundreds of others, men, women, children, all suspended mid-motion, frozen in silence, their faces locked in expressions of fear, confusion, some even smiling faintly, like they never realized they were gone. Ethan tried to scream, to move, to breathe, but it was like time itself had been stripped away. Then he saw it, himself. Through a shimmer in this strange reality, Ethan could see his body, still sitting in room 1707. Writing, breathing, blinking, alive, but not him anymore. He was no longer inside it. Something else was, and just beyond the glassy divide, the woman in white stood, watching him with a calm, satisfied gaze, like she'd won. The final warning time didn't pass in that place, not in the way humans understand it, but Ethan's thoughts still spun, grasping for meaning, answers, escape, until something floated past him, a book. His journal, it hovered open, pages turning as if caught in a wind he couldn't feel. Then it stopped. On the last entry, he recognized his own handwriting, but he didn't remember writing it. This room remembers everyone who enters, but only keeps the ones who doubt it. His breath, or whatever passed for it in this limbo, caught that phrase, keeps the ones who doubt it. The woman in white stepped forward, reaching for the journal. With one touch, it vanished into ash. The others around him, still frozen, began to drift closer, their eyes locked on him as though waiting for him to understand. He finally did. Room 1707 wasn't haunted. It collected. The room remembers they never found Ethan Kane. His room was undisturbed. Camera on, journal closed, a half-full cup of coffee still warm on the desk. Some said he vanished. Others claimed he faked it, just another stunt for a good story. But if you listen closely in that part of town, if you stand near the old Argent Hotel, long since condemned and quietly erased from maps, you might still see that brass elevator flicker to life. You might still hear a soft song playing from behind the wall, and if you're truly unlucky, you'll find a door unmarked but waiting, and maybe you'll remember this story, maybe you'll knock just once. But be warned, it listens twice.